Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&As, so let me get my hat on and get to this first question. Let's knock this out. Alright. Hi Jason, I'm currently running the cutting version of your novice 5x5. Sometimes after heavy sets of an exercise, especially squats, I feel as if I'm about to pass out or I can see stars. This might be a weird question, but is this normal, or am I pushing myself too hard even though I'm following the program like you wrote it? You know what, as long as you're not having grinders, you're not failing reps, getting a little bit dizzy after heavy squats and heavy deadlifts isn't unusual. If you are worried about it, go see a medical doctor. You know, when you have any questions, anything is in doubt, or you're getting dizzy, or you have any negative symptoms in your body, that's usually a good idea to go check in with a physician and see what's going on. You know, I can't advise that enough. People often say things like that. It's like, well, go get it checked up. If you're worried about it, go check in on it. However, that is fairly normal. It's fairly common, but it doesn't mean it can't be a sign of something else going on in your body, some medical condition. Because again, strength training and vigorous exercise will usually bring out symptoms of anything going on with you. Like if you have some sort of latent medical issue that you're unaware of, there's nothing like training for it to become apparent that something is wrong. Now, in the case of what you described, that's pretty common, but it's unlikely to be a sign of a medical condition, but it could be. So maybe go get it checked out if it doesn't go away. Now, that being said, there's a couple things you can do differently here. Number one, learn to breathe better. On your way down on squats or before you squat on each rep, take a deep breath at the top. Get full lungs, get as much air as you can before you do each rep on an exercise. Again, something that is useful when you're training correctly and you're doing full range of motion exercises, you're taking your time instead of just doing partial middle reps. It allows you to get proper breathing on every lift. Again, something that comes with training correctly, and again, doing full range of motion, making sure your technique is good between reps on different exercises. It allows you to do things like get your breathing straight. So before you squat each time, at the top of each rep, take a deep breath, as deep of a breath as possible. Do the same thing before you pull each time on a deadlift. And that way you can exhale while you're lifting. That will help a lot. The other thing to consider, make sure you're not using a pre-workout or anything. Because again, stimulants, too many stimulants in your system can cause problems here. So sometimes some of the supplements and things that people take can contribute to these issues. And like I said, there's studies on this stuff, and we know for a fact pre-workouts don't do anything to improve your muscle gains. They don't do anything to improve your long-term performance. So there's no reason to take them other than them just being trendy, or that you're not on a proper program. So again, drop pre-workouts and things like that, and learn to breathe better, and this should sort itself out. All right, next question. Do you think active people manage to get away with higher fructose intakes than 50 grams because they use up their liver glycogen to fuel their activities? Thanks. You know, I've heard people suggest this. Here's the thing. It's possible, but we don't have evidence of this. And what you need to understand with fructose, the reason fructose causes issues in the liver isn't because most of it ends up as muscle glycogen. It's the fact that it has to be processed by the liver before it turns into glucose. All right, because that glucose is what becomes the glycogen. Fructose has to go through a process through the liver. You cannot burn fructose in any part of your body for fuel. All right, it has no fuel value until it's passed through the liver. And the process of passing it through the liver can elevate liver enzymes. It can put stress on the liver just like drinking alcohol can. And again, you can handle limited amounts of it. But the problem we get into is that the same question you could ask is, well, you know, could they drink more alcohol and have less liver problems? Well, maybe. But would I count on that? Not necessarily. Now, that being said, people who are very physically active tend to suffer less negative effects in general from various things in their diet. And so it's not so much that they're burning through liver glycogen, it's the fact that people who are just physically active suffer less problems because they just burn through more fuel. They have higher energy turnovers. They don't tend to store things like extra triglycerides and stuff in their liver, which is a lot of your problem there. That is part of your issue too. Is the fact that a lot of fructose ends up as triglycerides as well. It's not just the fact that it ends up as glucose, it's the process that goes through the liver, and the fact that it turns into blood triglycerides. It can also cause fatty liver. Some of that could probably be offset with additional exercise, so really active people probably can handle more fructose than sedentary people. And I think the biggest issue we see too is that it's not that the activity offsets the negative so much as the fact that high fructose intake exacerbates the problems that come from being sedentary, because being sedentary is in of itself a cause of physical disease. Just by itself, it causes disease and illness in the body on its own. It's that some aspects of the diet can exacerbate those negative effects and make them worse, and this is a case of that. So, it's kind of one of those, it's a mixed bag. You're not going to completely eliminate all the problems from fructose with exercise of higher intakes, but you can probably offset them to a large extent, and we don't actually know what the safe intake is. We only have studies on this in sedentary people, and we know what happens to them. I personally wouldn't recommend that people consume double the safe limit for sedentary people of fructose just because they're physically active. I mean, you can do what you want, but it wouldn't be my recommendation because we don't have enough evidence and data to really pin this down. We can't pin it down. We can speculate and say it'll probably offset most of it, but we don't know that, and that's the difference. All right, next question. Jason, is your linear periodization intermediate strength program a good enough power building program, or is it primarily for strength? The guy who asked this, I don't think he's read the program, and I don't understand, because when you have a program that has you doing a lot of big compound movements, squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, rows, then accessory work for you to where you're doing pretty high volumes, meaning you're coming in and you're squatting and rowing and benching and overhead pressing twice a week for 3 sets of 10, then you do 4 sets of 10, then 5 sets of 10. I mean, that's 10 sets of 10 reps per week on week 3 of the program. 10 sets of 10 every week on all those big compounds. Same thing, you go to 8 rep sets, that's still considered hypertrophy range. The volume on the 5 rep sets is still enough to stimulate nearly maximum hypertrophy. So out of your 12-week program, you know that you have at least 9 weeks that should be producing nearly maximum hypertrophy. 9 weeks, and then you have 3 weeks it's focusing on max strength. Which again, when you go back to the hypertrophy blocks, like you go back to the first block again, when you reset the program after 12 weeks, you're going to be stronger on those high rep sets again and stimulate even more growth. So I don't really understand why a person would think that. I mean, I could understand people don't understand that you can't fully separate size and strength for natties, who don't understand that if this was like a bunch of 3 and 4 and 5 rep program, like it was 3 to 5 reps or 1 to 3 reps, I would get that. But 9 out of the 12 weeks, you're working with high sets of anywhere from 5 to 10 reps on multiple big compound exercises every week with room for accessory work towards your goals. This isn't good enough as a power building program. This is a textbook linear periodization power building program. This is intended for off-season athletes who are trying to gain strength and muscle mass in the off-season. All right, that's what it was written for. It's an off-season athlete program. So it is totally geared towards hypertrophy. It's totally geared towards hypertrophy. So I don't really understand the question at all why you would ask, but that sums it up. All right, next question. I have a question about your novice program. Let's say I'm doing squats, and on the last set I managed to do all 5 reps with acceptable depth on each rep. But the reps were grindy and the form was a little off, knee caving in, a little good morning action, etc. Should I consider this a failed set and try to redo the exercise with the same amount of weight in the next workout? Or should I go on and increase the weight the following workout? All right, brother, I made this very, very, very clear multiple times when talking about it. If your form and technique are breaking down because the weight is too heavy, we count that as failed reps. If you ever grind a rep or you ever have your form break down on an exercise, that is muscle failure. You failed. The exercises are to be done with good form, and if you can't maintain good form and decent bar speed, you count that as a failure. So you use the same weight again next workout, and if it happens twice, 2 workouts in a row, you reduce the weight 10% and then proceed from there. This is a very high volume, moderate intensity program with moderately heavy weight. There's no room in this for a bunch of grinding and bad technique, and that's the whole point, is that you're using progressive overload on a system like this to put on muscle mass and to get stronger. And so the whole idea of this is that you shouldn't be grinding or having form breakdown. So yes, you count that as a failure. You count that as a failure. And let me ask you a simple question. Why in the world would you come in and grind reps and have form breakdown, knee cave, good morning on a squat, and then add weight the next week? Again, this is why I say this, so that this is foolproof for a novice, is that if they see any form breakdown, they count that as a failure. because novices will do exactly what you're describing, and that's one of the problems why novices get hurt, why novices stall, things like that, is that propensity to say, well, at least I got the weight up, I'll go heavier. It's not how it works. You're supposed to get stronger with good technique and good form. So yeah, that is absolutely a failure. Do not add weight the next week. All right, next question. If the RDA on daily protein for people who don't lift weights is 60 to 80 grams a day, and we know that for building new muscle we only need to add 2 to 3 extra grams of protein every day, why are the recommendations almost double when we start lifting? Because you're getting your recommendations out of a bodybuilding magazine that sells protein powder. Who's recommending this to you? I don't recommend this to you. I don't see top sports nutritionists recommending this to their football players who want to bulk up. You know, you don't see them putting out memos for high school football players who want to gain 10, 15 pounds of muscle. Do you see them telling them to eat 200 grams of protein? No. Most of the experts say for gaining muscle, 1 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now, if you're a novice starting out, unless you're fat, in which case being fat, you might want to increase protein for the satiety so that you can eat less calories easier. But that's not about building muscle. That's about recompositioning and bringing the scale down. But if you're not fat, you're probably only going to be like 70 kilos. 70 kilos. Right? So you're saying, well, the RDA is 60 to 80. Well, I'm telling you that if you're 70 kilos, you should be eating 70 to 100 grams of protein. That's not much higher than what that's being recommended there. That's all you need to gain muscle at that body weight. It's all you need to gain muscle maximally at that body weight. What's the problem? That's what you need to eat. And here's the other thing. If you're eating enough calories of whole foods to gain weight, and you're lifting weights and doing cardio and being physically active, how are you going to get less protein than that? The only people who even need to track their protein when they're just trying to gain muscle are probably vegans. Because if you're eating grains, I mean, go look at the stuff on pasta. Hell, 1,500 calories of pasta has like 70 grams of protein in it. 70 grams of protein. You eat that and half a chicken breast and then eat a bunch of rice and vegetables the rest of the day, you're going to eat over 100 grams of protein. Like the average omnivorous 2,500 calorie diet for an athletic male, unless you're avoiding animal products and choosing not to eat meat or dairy, if you're just eating a balanced diet with plenty of grains, plenty of whole foods in it, and some meat and dairy, it's going to be very difficult for you to eat less than 100 grams of protein. It really is. It's going to be difficult. You would actually have to do it on purpose. But you know, you go look at any basic whole food diet, a balanced diet, you're going to easily get over 100 grams of protein. You shouldn't even have to track. So again, this isn't really a problem. All right, next question. How do you come up with the equivalent workloads for high reps / lower weights versus lower reps / more weight on a given exercise? I.e. to prevent risking of injury on certain lifts, shoulder presses for example, I am more likely to press 25-pound dumbbells versus 27.5 pounds on a given set. How do I know I'm achieving progressive overload if I can't actually lift more weight? Similarly, this question applies to when I increase my deadlift. If I go from 8 by 6 at 35 pounds and move up to 150 pounds, what's the equivalent workload to know I'm achieving progressive overload? I'm 5'8", 135-pound female. Thank you, as always, Jason. Okay, I want you to go to Google, and I want you to type in 1 rep max calculator. All right, type in 1 rep max calculator, and you'll see there are charts and percentages that show you exactly what percentage of a weight you should be able to lift for a given number of reps, meaning you should be able to compare your 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rep sets and calculate them to an equivalent strength on a 1 rep max. If the calculated 1 rep max goes up, then you know that you have progressed, that is actually a higher progressive workload set, because you're working you know, again, with something that is equivalent to a 1 rep max strength. So percentage systems like that are a fantastic way to judge your progress. Meaning, so you don't want to go to the 27.5-pound dumbbells, but you've got the 25, so you could still calculate your max based on how many reps you can do with good form, right? And if you're able to calculate that, and you're able to know where you're at in regards to that, you should be able to calculate if the sets you're doing translate into more strength. That should be able to give you the calculations yourself. So you don't actually have to always work with heavier and heavier weights, particularly heavier weights. You should be able to compare different weights and rep sets based upon the calculated 1 rep max, and that should be able to tell you how much intensity you're actually utilizing. Well, the percentage of your max is the intensity that you're utilizing, but to see if it's the equivalent amount of strength, you should be able to calculate it off any of those charts. So that way you can compare your 150-pound deadlift sets to your 135-pound deadlift sets, even though there's a 10% difference, actually like it's like 11% difference between the weight. You should be able to count the reps that you can do with good form and calculate if you've increased your workload or not, because it'll be based upon the reps versus percentage of your max. And those charts should help you a lot. You should be able to go to any of those 1 rep max calculators, plug that in, and it should sort you right out. All right, next question. Jason, what do you think about bottom-up exercise variations for less muscle damage and improved recovery? Anderson squats, chest level pin press, barbell rows from the floor, etc. You know what? I'm a big fan of paused or dead stop training. I'm a big fan of it. I advocate a lot of that. I want you guys to think about it. What do I mostly do? When you guys have seen me bench in the past, do you ever see me touch and go bench? No, it's always pause bench. How about even when it's an incline bench? It's pause bench. When I'm not doing push presses, all of my presses are from a pause on my chest. All of them are from a pause on my delts. How long has it been since you've seen me do any rows but pin lay rows from the floor? In fact, I'm getting more into at the bottom of my chin-ups, holding at the bottom for a second so that I can pull from a dead stop. I do tons of deadlifting. No, that's the way most people should train. It's not about less muscle damage. People need to really, really drop this idea of the muscle damage thing. Your lifting doesn't cause the type of damage that you guys think it causes. It's generally micro tearing of the muscle fascia, and that doesn't necessarily translate into more growth. That translates into DOMs. The damage to muscle tissue that we're thinking of is chemical in nature. And you know what? You can create the same amount of massive chemical damage caused by chemical cleaving of the protein. You can cause that with doing 20% of your max to failure. You can do that with 10-pound dumbbells on your curls if you take them all the way to absolute failure. You can get the same effect. It's chemical in nature. It's not structural the way you guys are thinking. The difference is that all these dead stop training requires you to stimulate more muscle fibers more quickly in order to get the weight moving, because you're hitting everything from a dead stop. It requires a higher amount of neural efficiency and neuromuscular efficiency. What this does is that this increases speed strength and it increases power. All right, speed strength, power, all of that, the ability to accelerate, force acceleration, those are what make you explosive. Those are what make you powerful. These are traits that every single athlete should be pursuing in almost every sport in the world. And I would say that this sort of training is what you should be putting a lot of your energy into. Not 100% of it. You don't have to put all your energy into one training style ever. But enough of your effort into it. If your goal is to be fit, being fit is the ability to be athletic. All right, the ability to be athletic. You could just go do some athletic endeavor and try it out, and all you would have to do is develop the skill set, the sport-specific skills around it, because you already have the speed, the power, the strength to do it. I don't care whether it's golf or tennis or hiking or whatever you want to do, parkour, whatever you want to pick up. The whole idea here is that you're building a strength base. And so anyone who wants to be fit needs to be focusing heavily on explosive lifts. It doesn't necessarily have to be off the pins. You can lower and pause on your chest. Pause floor presses, pause work, pause work, pause work. Work off the floor. Anything that's explosive that requires you to lift a weight from a dead stop on every rep is going to make you more explosive. And it has to do with neuromuscular efficiency and how quickly you can activate muscle fibers. All right, and that's the whole point. That's the reason the deadlift is such a powerful lift. Because you're having to explode a very, very heavy weight off the floor. You have to start accelerating it within the first inch or two of the movement, or you won't be able to lock it. So hopefully that explains that. It doesn't cause less muscle damage, but it's a great way to train, and I generally recommend it. All right, next question. Schrodinger's cat. Science says push presses retain your chest press strength And deadlifts retain leg squatting strength. Will you test your bench and squat at some point to quantify this? Why would I need to test this stuff again? You guys, you probably are a newer fan. You've only been watching me a year or two. Back when I came back to training, if you guys recall, on the original Ice Cream Fitness, I was documenting some of my training again. 9 months after I was given medical permission to start lifting weights again, I hit a 525-pound deadlift, right? I hit a 525. I wasn't going to power lift for over another year. So I put my deadlift on hold and I focused on squats, right? I focused on squats and I focused on various forms of rows. I did pen lay rows, I was doing T-bar rows, I was doing chin-ups, right? I did all this back work and I did high volumes of squatting. I did not deadlift for a year. I quit deadlifting during most of pretty much the first year that my first channel was up, the Ice Cream Fitness channel. What happened when I went back to deadlifting? Anyone remember? I pulled 220 kilos, that's about 485, my very first day back deadlifting. You know, that was raw, no straps, just chalk, right? I pulled 485. I broke like 505 the next time I deadlift. And I think I did that for reps. I did it for like a triple. Then I did 525 for a triple. And then I pulled 540. So basically, 4 deadlift workouts after going a year without deadlifting, I beat the previous year's deadlift PR by 15 pounds. In 4 workouts, a year apart. Why? Because I did exactly this. I maintained the strength of all the muscles involved in the deadlift. I did lots of rowing, various rows for my back. I did a lot of squatting. I even was doing some front squats. So I did back squats. I did front squats. I did chin-ups. I was doing pen lay rows. I was doing T-bar rows. What happened? All of that built up the musculature for all of my deadlift muscles to the point to where even though I hadn't deadlifted, it took me 1 workout to relearn the technique and hit 485. Then I repped 505, which already put me back at the strength I was at. Then I beat the previous strength I was at the 3rd workout by doing it for reps. And then I beat it by 15 pounds for a single on the 4th workout. These workouts are like 4 days apart. All right, so in 2 weeks' time of doing the deadlift again, actually within 1 week I was already surpassing it on the reps, if you were to calculate the reps versus the max. So I've already demonstrated how this crossover works. I've already done it on camera. Why do I need to quantify it again? I might bench, close grip bench later just for fun, but right now it's really not something I need to do. I could probably pick the close grip bench back up pretty quick. I could probably be repping over 300 pounds in no time. If that's something I decided to do, I'm sure I could be doing it within a couple weeks. As again, we've demonstrated this before. We've demonstrated this carryover. And remember, guys, the same thing. I went to pure incline bench for a little while and then went back to the flat bench before meet. Right? So we've done all this on the camera before. We've already done all this. Why do we need to prove what the science already shows, what I've already shown with anecdote and proven on camera? Why do we need to revisit it? We've already done it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.